A billionaire finds a little poor girl identical to his missing daughter. Then he learns her mom has just 1 month to live. Raymond Carter stared at a certain young girl from across the street. His heart froze in his chest. The last time he had seen those eyes, he was holding his daughter's hand, but that was years ago. Emily? His voice cracked, barely a whisper, too soft to be heard. He stood still for a long moment, watching Lily. She was standing on the corner, her tattered coat barely enough to protect her from the chill of the late afternoon air. Her wide, curious eyes were the same deep shade of green as Emily's. The same eyes that used to look up at him, full of innocence and hope. Raymond's heart clenched in his chest, his breath caught in his throat. Could it be her? If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I'm bringing you another story just as interesting and unforgettable as this one. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. Now, let's dive in. But then he dismissed the thought. It couldn't be. It had been years since Emily disappeared, years of sleepless nights, endless searching, and unanswered questions. The rational part of his mind fought against the stirring in his chest, but the deeper part, the part buried beneath his wealth, his power, and his armor of success, was starting to ache. The world around him felt distant, as if it were fading into a blur, while Lily remained sharp, like a beacon that had somehow pierced the wall of his self-imposed isolation. He could almost hear Emily's laughter, so faint it seemed like a dream. He blinked, shaking his head, and began walking toward her, but stopped short when he noticed the woman standing next to Lily, her mother. Mara. The woman's frail frame leaned against a worn shopping cart filled with scattered items, including a few bags of groceries. Her face was drawn and pale, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, but there was a fierceness in her expression, a protective, stubborn kind of love that reminded Raymond of someone he used to know. Mara looked up, catching sight of Raymond's gaze. Her eyes flickered with a mixture of suspicion and wariness. Without a word, she pulled Lily closer, instinctively sheltering her daughter behind her, as if to protect her from whatever danger the stranger might pose. Raymond took another step, his heart still pounding as he drew closer to the girl. There was no mistaking it. The resemblance was uncanny. But before he could speak, Lily's eyes locked with his, and a subtle tremor ran through her. Her gaze was unreadable, yet there was something in her expression. A quiet sadness, a weariness that matched his own. "Can I help you?" Mara's voice broke the silence, sharp, but not unkind. Raymond hesitated, momentarily unsure of what to say. His mind raced, scrambling for some explanation, some reason why he had walked up to them, why he had been staring. But the words wouldn't come. He wanted to ask about Lily, to know more about her, but he also knew that such questions would sound strange, out of place. I'm sorry," Raymond finally stammered, his voice betraying his unease. I thought I saw someone I knew." Mara narrowed her eyes, skeptical, but not hostile. "People do that all the time. Think they see someone they know. I'll ask you again. Can I help you?" Raymond nodded slowly, shaking off the discomfort. He wasn't here to make excuses, to invade their lives, but the compulsion was too strong. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude." He turned to leave, his mind a whirl of confusion. But just as he turned away, he heard a soft voice from behind him. "Do you really think I look like her? If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I'm bringing you another story just as interesting and unforgettable as this one. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. Now, let's dive in." Raymond froze. His pulse spiked as he slowly turned back around to face the girl, her voice faint, but cutting through the distance between them. Her expression was now one of curiosity, tinged with the same cautiousness he had seen in her mother. The question hung in the air, almost too heavy to answer. Raymond didn't know what to say. His mouth opened, but no words came. Instead, he simply nodded, unsure if it was a yes to her question or just a confirmation of what he had been thinking. Lily's eyes flickered with something. Recognition? Fear? For a moment, Raymond thought he saw a fleeting glimpse of the same sadness he had buried deep within himself, but it couldn't be. "I'm sorry," Raymond murmured again. "I just thought you looked familiar." And before he could say anything more, Mara stepped forward, a protective force, placing a hand gently on her daughter's shoulder. "Come on, sweetheart," Mara said softly, guiding Lily away. "Let's go home." Raymond stood there, motionless, his mind swirling. As they walked away, he couldn't shake the image of Lily's face, the one that mirrored Emily's so perfectly. Was this just coincidence, or was it something more? But the moment was fleeting, and as they turned the corner and disappeared from his view, Raymond felt a deep ache settle in his chest. He knew he couldn't just forget about this girl, but how could he involve himself in her life when he barely understood what was happening? Have you ever had an encounter that made you question everything you thought you knew? What did you do with that feeling? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Sometimes a single moment can change everything. The days following that strange encounter weighed heavily on Raymond. He couldn't stop thinking about the girl, Lily, and the way her eyes seemed to hold a piece of his past. The memories of his daughter, Emily, her laugh, her small hand in his, the way she'd curl up next to him while he worked, had haunted him for years. But now, those memories felt like a distant echo, replaced by the image of a poor girl, barely a teenager, who looked so much like Emily it was almost painful to look at. Raymond found himself drawn back to that corner of the city. He told himself it was just curiosity, that he needed closure, that he needed to prove to himself that his mind had been playing tricks on him. But deep down, he knew there was more to it. He was desperate to understand the connection, to know why this girl felt like a ghost from his past. On the third day after their first meeting, Raymond returned to the same street, hoping for a glimpse of Lily. He'd scoured the area, driven around for hours, but there was no sign of her. He was beginning to think it was all just a bizarre coincidence when he spotted Mara sitting alone on a bench, her face tired but calm. Raymond hesitated, but something in him pushed him forward. His steps felt heavy as he approached, uncertain of what to say, but unable to ignore the pull he felt toward them. "Excuse me," Raymond said, his voice a little rough. Mara looked up, startled at first, before her expression softened with recognition. "You again," she said, though not unkindly. "You know, we don't usually get visitors around here. What do you want this time?" Raymond took a deep breath, unsure of how to begin. He didn't want to come off as a stranger who was meddling in their lives. Yet, the way his heart raced, the way his mind kept going back to that moment, he knew he couldn't walk away without at least trying to understand. "I'm sorry for intruding before," Raymond started, feeling awkward under her gaze. "It's just, I couldn't stop thinking about your daughter." Mara's face shifted slightly. Her hand subconsciously tightened around the straps of her bag as she leaned forward, her eyes narrowing slightly. "What's your point?" I know this sounds strange," he continued, trying to keep his voice steady. "But she reminds me so much of my daughter. The way she looks, it's almost as if she's—" His words faltered, the weight of what he was saying making it hard to breathe. "I lost my daughter years ago. She went missing. I've been searching for her ever since." Mara's face softened in a way that caught Raymond off guard. Her expression held empathy, but it was mixed with caution. She said nothing for a long moment, her eyes flicking to the side as if weighing her words. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said quietly, "but Lily isn't your daughter. She's mine, and I don't want anyone getting any ideas about her." Raymond swallowed the lump in his throat. He hadn't come here to make her angry or upset her, but the pain was rising in him once more, an old wound that he had thought healed. "I don't mean to overstep," he said, his voice softer now. "But I couldn't help but wonder if there's any chance you're mistaken. Maybe, just maybe, there's some connection between us, some reason why Lily looks so much like Emily." Mara's face grew tense. She glanced over at Lily, who was playing nearby, her eyes distant, her expression unreadable. The girl didn't seem to notice the conversation happening just a few feet away. "No," Mara replied firmly. "Lily is my daughter, and that's all she is." Raymond felt the sting of rejection, but he also felt something else, an undercurrent of something unspoken, a sadness in Mara's eyes that reminded him of his own grief. She had lost someone too, in a way he couldn't quite comprehend. "Please, just hear me out," Raymond said, his voice nearly a whisper. "I can help. I have resources, connections. If there's a chance she's my daughter, I want to know. I need to know." Mara stood up, her movements sharp, defensive. "You don't know anything about us. You don't know what it's like to live in this world. I'm not asking for your help, and I don't need it." Raymond took a step back, feeling the space between them widen. He had pushed too hard, too soon, and now the distance felt insurmountable. He watched as Mara turned away, her shoulders hunched against the weight of her burdens, and Lily, sensing the tension, wandered over to her mother's side. He had come hoping for some sign, some answer, but all he felt now was emptiness. The connection he thought he'd seen between them, the glimmer of a second chance, seemed impossible to reach. As he turned to leave, his heart heavy, he heard a soft voice calling out to him. "Wait." Raymond paused. He turned back slowly to see Lily standing in front of him, her small figure standing between him and Mara. Her gaze, steady and calm, locked with his. It was the same look he had seen in her eyes before, uncertain but not afraid. "I know what you mean," Lily said, her voice small but clear. "I don't know why, but sometimes I feel like I know you too." Raymond's breath hitched in his chest. Was this it? The moment where everything changed? He had spent years searching for answers, and yet here, in this quiet moment, the answer seemed so simple. A girl, a connection, a mother in the background. But there was still one more truth to face, one that threatened to shatter the fragile thread of hope he clung to. I don't understand," Raymond said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you say that?" Lily hesitated, her eyes glancing toward her mother, who had already started walking away. There was something between them, something unsaid. "It's just a feeling," Lily said softly, her voice trembling just slightly. "But my mom, she doesn't want me to know about her sickness. But I know she's dying, isn't she?" The words hit Raymond like a punch to the gut. His world stopped for a moment as he stared at Lily, the sadness in her voice echoing his own fears. The reality of her mother's illness was something he hadn't expected, but now that it was out in the open, the weight of the situation settled over him like a cold shroud. "I don't want to lose her," Lily whispered, her voice cracking, "but I feel like I've already lost so much." Raymond's heart broke for the girl in front of him. For the first time, he saw the depth of her pain. She was just like him, desperate to hold on to the past, even if that meant clinging to a ghost. What would you do if you met someone who reminded you of a lost loved one? Could you open your heart to them, or would the pain be too great? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Raymond sat in his office late that night, the soft hum of the city outside his window, doing little to distract him from the thoughts that consumed him. His desk was cluttered with papers, reports, and business emails, yet none of it mattered. His mind kept returning to Lily and the conversation they'd had earlier, the way her words had echoed in his mind, the sorrow in her voice that had reminded him so much of his own grief. Her mother was dying. He had come here searching for a daughter he thought he had lost forever, and now, staring at the city lights, he wondered if fate had finally given him a second chance, or if this was a cruel trick of the mind. But what did he know about this girl? He had only met her twice. Their brief encounters hadn't given him any concrete answers, just fleeting emotions and unanswered questions. Was Lily really his daughter? Could he trust the feelings stirring inside him? The resemblance to Emily was undeniable, but was it enough to base his actions on? Raymond's phone rang, breaking through his spiraling thoughts. He picked it up, his assistant's voice on the other end. "Mr. Carter, your meeting with the board is scheduled for tomorrow morning. You'll need to prepare for the presentation." Raymond's hand tightened around the phone. The presentation. It seemed like an eternity ago since he had cared about business deals and acquisitions. His wealth, his success. It was all empty now, just a mask for the deeper, unresolved pain. His daughter had been taken from him, and now, this girl had appeared out of nowhere, and with her, the possibility of everything he had lost coming back. But how could he trust his own heart? "I'll be there," he said curtly, hanging up without another word. He couldn't focus. There was too much at stake, and yet, every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lily's face, so much like Emily's, but so full of pain. Meanwhile, Mara sat in the dimly lit kitchen of their small apartment, the sound of her daughter's soft breathing from the next room barely audible. Lily had gone to bed early that night, her usual energy drained by the stress of her mother's illness and the constant worry that had become their reality. Mara knew what she had to face, what they both had to face, but it was easier to push it aside, if only for a moment. Mara had been too proud for too long, too afraid to let anyone get too close. Raymond Carter's intrusion had rattled her in a way she didn't expect. His wealth, his status, everything about him felt out of place in her world, yet there was something about him that pulled at her, something about the sadness in his eyes. He didn't just seem curious about Lily. There was something deeper, a longing that mirrored her own. But Mara had lived a hard life. She knew what it was like to lose everything, to be alone, struggling. The idea of getting involved with someone like Raymond, a man who had everything to lose, terrified her. If he wasn't Lily's father, what would happen? Would he walk away once the truth was out? Or worse, would he take Lily away from her in some effort to fix everything that had gone wrong? Mara sighed, rubbing her temples. The truth hurt too much. She couldn't risk Lily getting attached to someone like Raymond. It would only end in heartbreak. She had already lost so much. Her health, her energy, the ability to provide for her daughter. Everything was slipping through her fingers. And yet, Lily's words lingered in her mind, the quiet vulnerability that had slipped from her daughter's lips earlier. Did she know something Mara didn't? Was it possible that Raymond had come into their lives for a reason, that his presence was fate? Mara stood and walked to the small window that overlooked the alley behind their apartment. She pressed her forehead to the cool glass, staring out into the night, lost in thought. She had always been a fighter, a survivor. But now, with death knocking at the door, she found herself questioning everything. She had a month to figure out how to protect Lily. The following days passed in a blur of uncertainty. Raymond tried to focus on his work, but his mind kept drifting back to Lily and Mara. He couldn't let go of the feeling that he had a part to play in their lives, but he wasn't sure what it was. The gulf between him and them seemed insurmountable, and every time he tried to close the distance, Mara pushed him away. He wasn't a man accustomed to rejection. He had built an empire, surrounded by yes-men and sycophants. But with Mara and Lily, he felt completely out of his depth. They didn't want his money or his influence. They wanted something more real, something he wasn't sure he could offer. Still, there was no turning back now. He had to find out the truth. One evening, Raymond found himself in a cafe, a quiet place where he could think. The soft murmur of voices and clinking cups around him didn't calm his nerves, but it gave him the space to think, if only for a moment. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from his lawyer flashed on the screen. "The private investigator you hired found something you need to see. Can you meet?" The message was clear. The investigation into Lily's possible connection to him was about to take a turn. The truth was coming, one way or another, and Raymond wasn't sure he was ready for it. Have you ever found yourself holding back from the truth, even when you know it could change everything? Would you take the risk to uncover it, or would you stay in the comfort of uncertainty? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The next morning, Raymond met with his lawyer, a sharp, efficient woman named Clara, who handed him a thick envelope as soon as he stepped into her office. Her expression was unreadable, but Raymond could see the weight of her words before she even spoke them. "Here's what the investigator found," she said, her voice low. "It's not definitive yet, but the girl you've been looking for, Lily, was reported missing years ago. The circumstances don't quite add up, and there are gaps in the story, but it's enough to raise questions." Raymond's pulse quickened. His eyes scanned the contents of the file, details about the missing girl, a broken family, and a mother who had disappeared from the records after a tragic accident. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, but they were still scattered, too fragmented for him to make sense of. "Can you arrange a meeting with Lily and Mara?" Raymond asked, his voice tight with urgency. "I need to know the truth." Clara hesitated. "Raymond, I understand your desire for answers, but you need to be careful. This situation is complicated. People are involved, and emotions are running high. You can't rush this." But Raymond's mind was already made up. He couldn't wait any longer. He had to know who Lily really was. The connection he felt couldn't be ignored. The chance of finding Emily, or a version of her, was too strong to dismiss. Meanwhile, Mara was struggling to keep her emotions in check. The tension that had been building between her and Raymond finally snapped when she received an unexpected call. She could hear the familiar, controlled voice of Raymond Carter on the other end, asking if he could meet with her and Lily. Her instinct was to say no, to shut him out for good, but there was something about his tone, something desperate, that made her hesitate. She could feel the weight of Lily's words, the way her daughter had spoken so quietly about the possibility of Raymond being her father. Mara didn't want to entertain that idea. She had enough on her plate. But the truth was, she couldn't deny the possibility any longer. Mara stood in front of her kitchen mirror, staring at her reflection. Her health had deteriorated faster than she'd expected, and the thought of her daughter losing her mother too soon was a constant ache in her chest. How could she protect Lily from the harsh world when her own life was unraveling? "Mom, who was that?" Lily's voice interrupted her thoughts as the young girl appeared in the doorway. "Is it him again, Mr. Carter?" Mara turned, her heart aching as she looked at her daughter. There was so much she wanted to protect her from, but the reality was becoming undeniable. She had no choice but to face it. I don't know, sweetheart," Mara said quietly, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. "But we need to meet with him." Lily's eyes widened. "But why? Why does he want to see us?" Mara sighed and walked toward her daughter, kneeling down to meet her at eye level. "I don't know, but I need you to trust me, okay? We'll figure this out together." The day of the meeting arrived, and Raymond found himself at the same small apartment complex he had visited before. He parked his car at the curb, his mind racing with anticipation, his heart thumping in his chest. The prospect of learning the truth both exhilarated and terrified him. He wasn't sure what he expected from the meeting, but when he rang the doorbell and heard footsteps approaching, his anxiety spiked. The door opened slowly, and there stood Mara, her eyes still wary. But there was something softer in her gaze now, an acceptance, perhaps, that whatever was happening was out of her control. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice steady but not warm. "You wanted to talk?" Raymond nodded. "Please, just call me Raymond." He took a deep breath, unsure of how to approach this delicate situation. "I've been looking into things. I have reason to believe that Lily might be my daughter." Mara's expression tightened, but she stepped aside to let him in. As Raymond entered the apartment, he couldn't help but notice how small and worn everything was. The mismatched furniture, the modest kitchen, and the lingering smell of something burning on the stove. Yet, there was a warmth here, a sense of life that seemed to contrast sharply with his own sterile, emotionless mansion. Lily was sitting at the kitchen table drawing quietly, but when she saw Raymond enter, she froze. Her eyes widened, and for a moment she looked like a deer caught in headlights. Raymond felt a pang in his chest. This was it. The moment when everything would either fall apart or fall into place. "Lily, he said gently, stepping closer to her. I know this is strange, and I don't mean to upset you, but I need to know. Are you my daughter? Lily's breath hitched, and she glanced at Mara, who stood by the door, her face unreadable. There was a long, tense silence, and Raymond could almost feel the weight of the decision pressing down on the girl. Finally, Lily spoke, her voice small but clear. I don't know, but I think I could be. I've always wondered why I felt like there was something missing inside me. Raymond's heart swelled, but Mara stepped forward, her voice sharp as she interjected. This isn't what you think, Raymond. Lily is my daughter. She's the only family I have left, and I can't let you take that from me. Her words stung, but Raymond wasn't deterred. He couldn't let this slip away. I'm not here to take her from you, Mara, he said, his voice firm but filled with emotion. I just want the truth. If Lily is my daughter, I want to be there for her, whatever that looks like. I don't want to force anything. I just want to know. The tension in the room thickened, but for a moment, it felt like they were all in the same space, caught between hope and fear, between the past and the future. Have you ever faced a situation where the truth could either bring you closer or tear everything apart? What would you do in this moment? Pursue the truth or protect what you already have? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The silence that followed Raymond's words hung in the air like a weight none of them could shake off. Mara's face was hard, her posture defensive as she stood near the door. Raymond could see the deep sadness in her eyes. Fear, pain, a protective love for her daughter that was raw and unyielding. It was the same love he had once known, for Emily. Lily, however, looked torn. Her gaze darted from Raymond to her mother, then back to him. She was just a girl, but there was something in her eyes that betrayed the maturity of someone who had already seen too much, suffered too much. It was the same look he had seen in Emily's eyes before she vanished, before the world had swallowed her whole. Raymond took a deep breath and stepped forward, trying to close the distance between them. He wasn't here to upset anyone. He wasn't here to tear their lives apart. He just needed to know. He needed to understand why this girl, this stranger, felt like his daughter. I'm not trying to make things harder, Mara, he said softly, trying to soften the sharp edges of his voice. But something about Lily. It's like looking at Emily all over again. I can't ignore it. I need to know if she's my daughter. Mara's eyes narrowed. You think just because she looks like her, you can walk in here and claim her as your own? You have no idea what it's like, living this life. Raymond's heart sank as the words hit him. He knew that life. He knew the loneliness, the ache of never feeling whole. But what he didn't understand, what he couldn't wrap his head around, was why Lily, why now, was stirring this turmoil inside him. I don't want to take anything from you, Mara, he said, his voice tight with emotion. I need answers. I can't keep living in the dark. Lily, who had been silent up until this point, suddenly stood up, her chair scraping across the floor. She walked over to the table, her eyes locked on her mother's. There was something about her quiet strength, a determination in the way she held herself. Mom, she said softly, her voice wavering with uncertainty. Maybe we should just talk to him. Maybe he can help us. Mara's expression shifted, just for a second, as her gaze softened, a crack in her armor. But then, her face hardened again, and she turned away. You don't understand, Lily. You don't know who he is. You don't know the kind of man he is. Lily stood there, her small body trembling, but she didn't back down. I don't know, but I want to. I want to know if I can trust him. I want to know if this is really true. Mara's eyes filled with tears, and she bit her lip, trying to hold back the rush of emotions that surged up inside her. But she couldn't keep it in anymore. She turned to Raymond, her voice breaking. I'm not asking for your pity, Raymond, or your money. You don't know what it's like to fight every day just to keep my daughter safe. You don't know the sacrifices I've made just to survive. My life has been nothing but a struggle, And now you want me to just hand over my daughter to you? To someone I don't even know? Raymond's heart ached at the rawness in her voice. He could see how much pain she was carrying, how fiercely she was protecting Lily. She had been through hell, and she was still standing, still fighting. But what he couldn't understand was why she was so sure that he would take Lily away, as if he were some kind of threat. "I'm not here to take her away from you," Raymond said quietly. "I'm here to help. If she is my daughter, I want to help her, whatever that looks like. I know I can't undo the past, but I don't want to keep living with this guilt, this emptiness. I need to know if she's mine. I need closure for both of us." Lily looked at her mother again, and this time she stepped forward. "Mom, I know you're scared, but maybe, just maybe, this is the answer we've been waiting for." Mara's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she didn't respond. She looked down at the floor as if she were weighing her options, weighing the consequences of everything. Raymond watched her, his own emotions rising like a tide. He didn't want to push her too hard, but the desire for answers was overwhelming. After a long pause, Mara finally spoke. Her voice was soft, fragile, like she was barely holding it together. "I'm not sure you're ready for this, Raymond. You think you're looking for your daughter, but you don't know what it means to love her the way I have, to protect her when the world is against you, to fight for her every day. You don't know what we've been through." Raymond swallowed hard. He could hear the pain in her voice, the burden of everything she had carried for years, and he realized, maybe for the first time, that he wasn't just walking into a stranger's life. He was stepping into the aftermath of a broken world, a world Mara had built for Lily to survive in. "I don't know," Raymond said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I want to understand. I need to. Because I can't keep living with this emptiness inside me." There was a long silence. The air in the room seemed to grow heavier as the truth hung just out of reach. Mara looked at Lily, and something shifted in her eyes. Her tough exterior cracked for a moment, and she looked back at Raymond. "You're right. You deserve to know the truth. But understand this, Raymond. If this is your daughter, you're not just going to walk in and fix everything. It won't be that simple." Raymond nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I know it won't be simple, but I'm willing to try." What would you do if you were in Raymond's shoes, seeking the truth while knowing it could shatter everything? Would you still push for answers, or would you walk away? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The days that followed felt like a blur to Raymond. Despite Mara's initial resistance, there was an undeniable shift. She didn't shut him out completely. It wasn't a full acceptance, but it was enough to give him a glimpse of hope. Mara had agreed to a DNA test. It was the only way to know for sure, and though she didn't like it, she couldn't keep living in this state of limbo. She told herself it was the only way to prove to Raymond that Lily wasn't his daughter, so he could move on and leave them in peace. The results would take a few weeks, but in the meantime, Raymond and Lily had started spending more time together. At first, it was awkward. The quiet moments between them were charged with the weight of their unspoken fears. Lily would avoid his gaze, unsure of what to make of the man who might be her father, and Raymond, for his part, didn't know how to navigate this delicate space. He had spent so many years alone, consumed by the loss of Emily, that he hadn't realized how much he had missed having a child in his life. One afternoon, after the results had been sent off for testing, Raymond found himself at the apartment again. This time, it wasn't a tense meeting. It felt more like a pause, a moment of quiet in the storm of their lives. Mara had let him come in to talk, though she was still guarded. She had prepared tea for them, though she wasn't sure what to say, or if she even wanted to talk to him at all. Lily, on the other hand, was acting a little differently. She had warmed up to Raymond, even if only a little. She was still hesitant, but there was a spark in her eyes when she spoke to him now, a flicker of curiosity about the man who might be her father. It was a quiet, tentative connection, but it was real. "Would you like to go for a walk?" Raymond asked Lily one day, after sitting with her and Mara at the small kitchen table. Lily blinked, caught off guard by the question. She looked over at her mother as if seeking permission, but Mara gave a small nod, a silent permission for them to step out. She was tired, the constant weight of her illness catching up with her. She needed time to rest, and perhaps this was a chance for Lily and Raymond to find their own way. The walk wasn't long, just down the street and back, but for the first time, it felt like a real conversation between them. They didn't talk about the test or the past. Instead, they talked about simple things, about books Lily liked to read, about Raymond's childhood memories of his own father, about the stars that flickered in the sky above them as the sun began to set. "I used to be afraid of the dark," Raymond confessed quietly, his voice almost a whisper. "I thought I would never find my way out of it." Lily looked up at him, her eyes wide. "You were scared of the dark?" she asked, incredulous. "But you seem so strong. You don't look like someone who'd be afraid of anything." Raymond smiled softly, the first genuine smile he had shared in a long time. "Well, that was before I learned how to be strong. I think everyone has to learn it at some point. We all have our own darkness to face." Lily didn't say anything for a moment, but she seemed to absorb his words, letting them sink in. She didn't know exactly what he meant, but something in his voice told her he understood. He understood what it was like to be afraid, to be lost, to have to fight against the world. As they reached the park near their apartment, Lily stopped walking and sat down on the bench. "You're nothing like the people I imagined you'd be," she said, her voice soft. I thought you might be like everyone else, just rich and distant. But you're different." Raymond sat beside her, his heart swelling. The girl was tentative, unsure, but she was beginning to see him as more than the man with the money. "I'm not perfect, Lily," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've made mistakes, big ones. I'm still learning how to be better, but I want you to know something. I'm not going anywhere. Whatever happens with the test, I'm here. And if I can be a part of your life, I want to be." Lily turned to look at him, her expression serious. "Do you really mean that?" Raymond nodded, a deep sincerity in his eyes. "I do." There was a long silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that comes when two people have shared something important, something that needs no words to explain it. Later that evening, back at the apartment, Mara watched them from the doorway as they returned from their walk. She had overheard parts of their conversation, and something in her chest softened. She had always been the protector, the fighter, the one who shielded her daughter from the pain of the world. But now, for the first time, she saw something in Raymond that made her wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was hope. When they entered the small apartment, Lily immediately went to the corner, her little sanctuary, and sat down with her book. But her eyes kept glancing up at Raymond, a new kind of understanding forming between them. Mara couldn't ignore the feeling in her chest, the way Raymond looked at Lily. There was something there. It wasn't just about blood or DNA, it was about connection, about the possibility of healing. Maybe they could have a family again, maybe not the same family they once had, but a new one, built from the ashes of the old. Mara's heart was still guarded, still torn, but she couldn't deny the truth. Raymond wasn't just some wealthy stranger trying to claim her daughter. He was a man who had lost everything, who had found a second chance to love again. Do you think it's possible for people to truly change? Can someone who's been hardened by life still find a way to open up to others? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The night before the DNA test results were due to arrive, the atmosphere in the small apartment was unusually tense. Mara couldn't sleep. Her mind kept racing, turning over the possibilities like a storm that wouldn't pass. She had been trying so hard to protect Lily, to keep her from the truth, but the truth had a way of finding its way out. It always did. Raymond, despite his attempts to keep things light, had been persistent. He'd made it clear that he wanted to be part of Lily's life, no matter the outcome. He was still waiting for that answer, that final confirmation. But Mara couldn't ignore the feeling that with every passing moment, The world she had fought so hard to build was slipping away. Lily, for her part, seemed both excited and anxious. The thought of Raymond being her father, really being her father, had begun to take root in her heart. But at the same time, the weight of what that might mean was too much to fully embrace. Her mother had always been enough. Was she ready to let someone else in? As the night wore on, Mara finally gave in and fell asleep in the living room, exhausted from the long days of worry. But her mind was still troubled, and even in sleep, the sense of impending change hung over her. The next morning, Raymond arrived early, as he always did now. He had been visiting daily, offering to help with whatever he could. His presence was no longer a shock, though Mara hadn't quite made peace with it yet. Lily was still asleep when he knocked on the door, but Mara was already up, sitting at the table, staring at the unopened envelope that contained the results. "I should have known this would be hard," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. Raymond, sensing the heaviness in the room, approached cautiously. "Mara, I don't want you to feel pressured. I just need you to know that I'm here for both of you, regardless of what the test says." Mara turned to look at him, her eyes filled with an exhaustion that made her seem far older than her years. "You don't get it, do you?" she asked, her voice suddenly sharp. "This isn't just about you, Raymond. It's about my daughter. She's all I have left in this world. And you think you can just waltz in here, waving some test results around and change everything?" Raymond was taken aback. "I'm not trying to change everything. I just want to know. I want to know if I've been looking at the wrong person all this time." Mara's eyes narrowed. "You really think this test is going to give you the answers you want? Do you really think that a piece of paper is going to fix what's been broken all these years?" Raymond's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say. He had spent so long searching for Emily, hoping to find her again, to feel whole. But he hadn't expected this, the emotional labyrinth he was now entangled in. It wasn't just about being a father to Lily. It was about the life he had lived without a family, the grief he had carried with him all these years. And the more he saw Mara and Lily together, the more he realized he wasn't sure if he was ready for the full weight of that responsibility. Before he could respond, Lily appeared at the doorway, her face pale and drawn. She had overheard the conversation. Her eyes flicked between her mother and Raymond, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. Lily's voice trembled as she spoke. "Why does it have to be so complicated?" The words cut through the air like a blade. The vulnerability in Lily's voice, the fear, the uncertainty, hit Raymond like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about him. This was about her. Mara stood up quickly, her voice rising in desperation. "Lily, honey, don't—" But Lily wasn't listening. She was already walking towards the door, her feet moving faster now, as if she were running away from something she couldn't bear to face. "I don't want to do this anymore," she said, the words so quietly that they almost didn't make sense. But when she turned to look at Raymond one last time, the pain in her eyes was clear. "I just want my mom. I don't want any of this." Raymond's heart clenched. He reached out, but Lily had already left, disappearing into the hallway before he could say a word. Mara collapsed back into the chair, her face pale and stricken with guilt. "This is all my fault," she whispered, almost to herself. Raymond stood frozen, his hand still outstretched as if he could reach Lily, as if he could fix everything in that moment. But he couldn't. He didn't know how. Later that day, Mara found Lily sitting by the window in her room, staring out into the street, her shoulders hunched with the weight of the world. "Mama, I don't want to do this," Lily said, her voice small, almost too soft to hear. "What if I'm not his daughter? What if I never was? What if all this time I was just hoping for something that wasn't real?" Mara's heart broke at the sight of her daughter, so much like her in that moment, torn between the harsh realities of life and the desperate hope for something better. She sat down beside Lily, wrapping an arm around her thin shoulders. "Lily, sweetheart," Mara said gently, "you're not alone in this. I'm here. always. And no matter what the test says, nothing can change the fact that I love you." Lily buried her face in her hands, her small body shaking with silent sobs. "But I want to know who I am, Mom. I want to know if I have a place in this world. I want to know if he's my dad. I don't want to be stuck in the dark anymore." Mara's heart shattered, but she knew in that moment that she had to stop fighting. She had to let Lily find her own path, even if it meant accepting the truth she had been avoiding. The DNA test results arrived shortly after, but they were no longer just a formality. They were the moment of reckoning, when everything would change, for better or worse. Mara took the envelope into her hands, staring at it as if it were a ticking bomb. She had no idea what would come next, but she knew that no matter what, she would have to let go. She would have to let Lily find her own answers. Have you ever faced a moment where the truth was too painful to accept, but you knew it had to be confronted? How did you handle it? Let us know in the comments below. The results were there, sitting on the table between them. It felt like the entire room had held its breath, waiting for this moment to arrive. The truth, in all its finality, was within those few words on a piece of paper, and no one knew what to do with it. Mara stood pacing back and forth. She had told herself she would accept whatever came, that she would face it with courage, but now that the moment was here, she felt paralyzed. What if it's true? What if Raymond really was Lily's father? She had spent so many years protecting her daughter from the world, protecting her from disappointment and heartbreak, and now, she wasn't sure how to protect her from the truth. Raymond sat across the table, his fingers tapping nervously on the edge of the envelope. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. He wanted so desperately for it to be true, wanted to believe that this girl who had already carved a space in his heart, was his daughter. He had spent so long in the dark, searching for a way to heal. But now that it was real, he wasn't sure he was ready for the responsibility. Was he strong enough to be a father? Was he ready to face everything this new reality would bring? He met Mara's gaze across the table, but she looked away, her expression unreadable. "I think we both know what's in there," Mara said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. The truth is right in front of us." Raymond nodded, his throat tightening. "But what if it's not what we expect?" He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes flickering toward the envelope again. "What if it's more complicated than just the test results?" Mara's breath caught. "It's always been complicated." A soft knock on the door interrupted their conversation. The sound of it was almost a relief, breaking the tension that had built between them. It was Lily standing there, hesitant but determined, her eyes locked with Raymond's for a moment before turning to her mother. "Mom, can I talk to you?" Mara's heart sank. She could see the uncertainty in Lily's eyes. She had known this day was coming, but seeing it written all over her daughter's face made her realize how much she had been avoiding. She wasn't just protecting Lily from the truth. She was protecting herself, too. "Of course, sweetheart," Mara said softly, stepping aside to let Lily into the room. Lily walked in, but she didn't sit down. She looked at the envelope, then back at her mother. "I heard you guys talking," she began. I just want to know. I want to know who I am, and I think I need to hear it from you, Mom. Is this the truth?" Mara felt a lump form in her throat. She looked at Lily, her heart aching with the weight of everything she had tried to keep buried for so long. She had tried so hard to protect her, to keep her from all the pain that came with the truth. But now, Lily was standing here, asking her to confront it, to make a decision. Mara didn't know how to answer. She had been fighting the truth for so long, afraid of what it might mean for her and her daughter. She had been trying to hold on to what little they had left, but now it seemed like that wasn't enough. They needed to face it together. "I don't know how to do this," Mara whispered, "but we have to." Lily looked at her mother, her eyes filled with understanding. She didn't need Mara to tell her what was in the envelope. She already knew. But there was something in her expression, something stronger than fear, that made Mara realize Lily wasn't just asking for answers. She was asking for permission to be free, to be who she truly was. Raymond watched them silently, his heart pounding. The room felt smaller, tighter, the weight of the moment almost suffocating. He wanted to say something, but no words seemed to come. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about Lily, and about Mara. Lily turned to Raymond, her eyes soft but searching. I don't know what happens next, but I think I need to know if I'm really yours. I need to know if I belong somewhere. The quietness of the room echoed her words, and in that silence, Raymond finally understood. This wasn't about blood or DNA or paper. It was about love. It was about connection. He had spent so many years searching for his daughter, but he had never stopped to ask himself why he needed that connection so badly. He stood up slowly, moving toward Lily. He didn't have the answers. Not yet. But he knew that if he was going to move forward, it had to be with the truth, even if it shattered the world they had built. Lily, he said softly, kneeling down in front of her. I don't have the answers you want, but I do know this. I'm here. I'm here for you, no matter what. Tears welled up in Lily's eyes as she looked at him, her heart catching in her throat. She wanted so badly to believe him, to trust him, but after all the years of uncertainty, all the years of longing, it was hard to know if she could really let him in. But there was something in his eyes, something that made her feel like she wasn't alone, that maybe, just maybe, she could have a family again. Mara stepped forward, placing her hand on Lily's shoulder. Whatever happens, she said quietly, we face it together. But Lily, it's not just about who you're connected to by blood. It's about the people who choose to love you. Lily looked up at her mother, and for the first time, she felt a sense of peace settle in her heart. It didn't matter what the test said. She didn't need to have a perfect answer. She just needed to know that she was loved. And at that moment, she knew she was. The room fell into a heavy silence as Mara slowly picked up the envelope and tore it open. Raymond and Lily both watched her, the tension building as she scanned the results. She let out a breath, her eyes flicking up to meet theirs. It's true. Raymond's heart skipped a beat. There was no turning back now. The truth had arrived, and everything had changed. But in that moment he realized something. He didn't need a piece of paper to tell him who Lily was. She was already his daughter. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one. The days after the revelation of the DNA results felt like a whirlwind. There was an undeniable shift in the air. The truth, though it had always been there, had finally been acknowledged. There was no denying it now. Lily was Raymond's daughter. The test confirmed it, but the answers they had been searching for weren't found in that simple sheet of paper. The truth was more complicated than that. It was in the unspoken bond that had already begun to form between them, the quiet moments, the shared glances, the vulnerability of a father and daughter who were trying to build a relationship in the wake of so much loss. For Raymond, the reality of having a daughter again was overwhelming. He had spent so many years chasing ghosts, searching for Emily, longing for a second chance to be a father. But the second chance wasn't what he had expected. It wasn't a return to the past. It was an entirely new future, one where he had to learn how to be a father all over again. He spent the following weeks trying to find his place in Lily's life. It wasn't easy. The history of their separation, the years of loss, were still there, lingering in the background. But Raymond was determined to show her that he could be the father she needed. And even though Lily still had doubts, still questioned what this new reality meant, she began to let him in, piece by piece. Mara, too, found herself in uncharted territory. She had spent so long protecting Lily, shielding her from the world's harsh truths. And now, she had to learn how to let go. Not of her love for Lily, but of the idea that she could protect her from everything. She could see how much Raymond cared, how much he wanted to be part of their lives, and for the first time, she began to accept that maybe they didn't have to be alone. One evening, a few weeks after the results had come in, Raymond invited both Mara and Lily to dinner at his home. It was the first time the three of them were coming together in his world, and though it felt like a small gesture, it was a step towards something bigger, something real. Raymond's home was everything they had imagined, grand, imposing, filled with elegance. But there was something different about tonight. The silence in the air wasn't as heavy. For the first time, there was an unfamiliar sense of warmth that neither of them had expected. It wasn't the mansion that made the difference. It was the people within it. Lily sat at the table, looking around at the lavish surroundings, her hands nervously twisting the napkin in her lap. Mara sat beside her, a quiet tension between them as they waited for Raymond to join them. The once awkward barrier between them had softened, but there were still unspoken feelings that lingered in the air. Raymond entered, carrying a bottle of wine, his steps measured but confident. When he saw them, seated together, he smiled, his eyes softening with emotion. "I'm glad you could make it," he said, his voice full of sincerity. "I know this isn't easy, but I want you both to know that I'm grateful for you giving me a chance." Mara looked at him, her gaze steady. "This is new for all of us," she said, her voice quiet but strong. "But I think we're all learning to move forward." Lily glanced up, her eyes meeting Raymond's. For a moment, the weight of everything that had happened felt like it was lifting. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that was enough. Raymond poured the wine and handed them each a glass. The meal was simple, nothing too extravagant, but the shared time together was meaningful. They ate, talked, and laughed. And for the first time in a long time, Lily felt a warmth in her chest. She was with people who cared about her. She didn't have all the answers, but she felt like she could breathe again. "I know this isn't what you expected, Raymond," Mara said, her voice suddenly serious. "But I want you to know that I'm not asking for anything from you. I don't need your money, your name, or your status. I just want what's best for her." She nodded toward Lily, who was looking down at her plate, her cheeks pink from the conversation. "I've spent so long protecting her from the world, but now I see that maybe we don't have to do it alone anymore." Raymond's throat tightened as he looked at Mara and then at Lily. He had never expected this kind of acceptance. He had always imagined that if he found his daughter, it would be a moment of pure joy, of reconnection. But now, he understood that it was more than that. It was a chance to start over, together. "I don't want to take the place of anything," Raymond said, his voice gentle. "I just want to be a part of her life. I want to be the father she deserves, if she'll let me." Lily didn't say anything at first. She simply looked at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. But then slowly she reached for her glass and raised it. Her voice, when it came, was quiet but clear. "To new beginnings," she said, her voice shaky at first but growing steadier as she spoke. "To finding our way." Raymond smiled, his heart swelling as he raised his glass with hers. To new beginnings. And in that moment, they all knew. It wasn't the test that had brought them together. It wasn't the result that defined them. It was their willingness to open their hearts and take the first step towards something new, something real. The night unfolded with more laughter, more stories shared, and an undeniable sense of connection between them. They didn't have all the answers, but they didn't need to. They had each other. And for the first time in years, Raymond allowed himself to feel whole. He had his daughter again. Not the one he had lost, but the one who had always been there, waiting for him to come back. Mara, too, felt a sense of peace settle in her heart. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she knew that they were no longer alone. They had each other. And that was enough. Do you believe that love can heal old wounds and bring people together, even when the past is complicated? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Sometimes, the hardest parts of life lead us to the greatest joys. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.